some people might say, your innovative startup doesn't make sense. This isn't good. This is different.
Yeah.
How do you distinguish between useful negative feedback versus, old entrenched ways?
Well, some of it comes back to the formula in the book, right? So some people have a little bit of a complicated way of presenting their idea, right? Is that what you're getting at?
Tell us what the formula is.
Yeah. So the formula basically is, a lot of times we get really excited about our ideas, right? And we communicate them in a way that makes sense to us, but it doesn't make sense to somebody sitting on the other side of the table. And so a good example of this was like when I was at Mint, the original name for it was Money Intelligence. And you're just like, what the hell does that mean? Like, right? Not that Mint like immediately means a million things, but it's at least a nicer brand. And then from there, you can explain what it does. And so the formula that I've come up with in the book is you really got to start by talking about one, who is the product for? What is the particular problem that you're trying to solve? And then what is the solution or what is the benefits as it relates back to the potential user? And when you start to articulate your idea or your product in that way, people on the other end just sort of immediately like, oh, I get it. And you can tell because they won't ask you the question, who is it for, what's the problem you're trying to solve, and what's the benefit, right? And so if you've ever heard one of those three questions, it's because you're articulating it in a way that's just going over their head. So simple example, with Mint, we would say, this is a product for the budget-conscious people who, want to save time and see all their financial accounts in one place, right? So that's kind of gives you a sense of, okay, here's what it does, and then the name, like the branding and all of that resonates with it. So I think that's important to just lay it out that way, and you can obviously tweak it as you iterate on your idea, but it's important to kind of come up with that formula for your particular idea.
Yeah, both of you are like huge advocates of getting that initial customer feedback, but have you ever had someone flat out tell you your idea is not going to work, I would never buy that?
I think for me personally, I probably just don't pay attention to people like that. So I don't know. Maybe I should pay more attention and try to understand why they say this won't work. I mean, certainly I test ideas. So like, Olark does live chat for businesses. We're on a lot of websites, and live chat's not the only thing we think about. So a lot of what we think about is, how do we help companies communicate with their customers better? And so we may have ideas and test out those ideas on people just by having conversations with them and see if the concept resonates with people. And if we can't figure out how to articulate that idea, well, maybe it's a little bit too early to try to productize. Or if they can't see why that new product concept is very interesting to them, well, that's probably like more of a back to the drawing board kind of thing.
I think a lot of times also when people, like the naysayers, are actually helpful. And if you push them a little bit, you can ask them questions like, well, why do you think this isn't going to work? Is it the customer segment? Because I get a lot of companies, like the ones here at 500 that I advise, like a lot of times they'll come and be like, oh, we're selling this to students. And I was like, so how much are students going to pay? And they're like, well, they're not. They can't afford to pay. And I'm like, then how are you going to build a business, right? So a lot of times it comes down to like not the idea, but the implementation or the execution of it, right? So part of it is if somebody says like this idea isn't going to fly, then you kind of have to hold them accountable and be like, why do you think it's not going to fly? Is it the customer segment? Is it market timing? Like, are we too early? Or like a lot of 3D printing companies that come in, we have issues with that, or even like some Bitcoin companies, we have issues with that where they're just a little bit early and there might not be an acquirer or there might not be enough interest in the market yet. So they've got to figure out where to get that interest, right? So is it the market timing, or is it an execution? Like there's not enough technology, there's not enough infrastructure, there's going to be a regulatory issue. So it's important to hold people accountable to be like, why do you think this isn't going to fly? And pinpoint the areas. Most of the time it's a customer issue where they're like going after a customer base that just can't afford the product or doesn't get the product, or might not even need the product. And so they've got to look for a different set of customers to go after.